love this poster. It doesn't have everything that, because there are like hundreds of black inventors who have contributed to society with their inventions that not only that we use every day, and one of the ones is a traffic light, and of course in the gas furnace, and potato chips. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to explore 6 black inventors, and we're coming from the tech world. And so it's going to be a little bit different. And one of the things too, from the historical standpoint, there are 3 of them from the top, and from current tech innovations. So I welcome you to the celebration of historical and black inventors. And looking from the historical, Mr. Otis Boykin, Marie Brown, Dr. Shirley Brown, and Mark E. Denton, and Lisa Gelobter, and 10-year-old. Now this is, and I mean this, 10-year-old Bishop Curry. And if you don't know who he is, he did such an amazing thing. I think you're really going to like it. So one other thing too, have any of you ever thought of an invention or something that you thought could work or anything? No? Okay. Well, if not, I'm going to actually go over for anybody who is out there who has some things that they want to do, what we call creation to reality. And I'm going to go over some suggestions, some of the pitfalls not to fall in. I have some suggestions on that. So tonight we're going to see how each inventor saw a need and worked towards filling that need. Let's start with Otis Boykin. Now he was born in Dallas, Texas in 1920. He attended Fisk University in 1941. He worked as a lab assistant, and he was at the university, the aerospace laboratory, where he tested, and I think this is really cool, automatic aircraft controls. Okay, back in the 40s to do that, I think is amazing. Then he moved to Chicago and he became a lab assistant, and then he got what they call the entrepreneurial bug bit him, and he started his own company, Boykin and Fruth. And also, this is where he got that thing of to do some inventions, and he had a couple projects going on there. And he later pursued graduate work. Someone always learning. One of the things I've learned from the inventors is that they continue to want to learn stuff. How does something work? And so he went there, but he didn't graduate. Okay, but it was only a temporary setback because what he did was he focused on resistors. Now, resistors is a technology of electricity, the flow of electricity to allow the safe operation of something, an electronic device. Every time that we flip a switch or something like that, in the olden days, if you flip the switch, it might burn out. The way that Mr. Boykin did it was that it was a little bit safer. And that setback was actually a comeback because what he did was he earned his first patent in 1959 for the wire resistor, allowing the precise amount of electricity to go to a component. Really, really awesome. And all of a sudden, he even made it better. That's another thing some of the inventors did. They made something a little bit better. And this one, he can manufacture inexpensively, and also it can withstand extreme temperature and shock. That was a big, big thing. So the product was more reliable, and Mr. Boykin received a second patent. So not only was his inventions, not with the missiles and computers, but able to move society forward, but also to save lives. As I said before, the inventors, they see a need and then they fill it. Now, Mr. Boykin was no different. What he had was a thing that his mom had passed away from heart failure, and he was only 1 year old. So he had a deep motivation to do something to help people with heart situations. So in 1959, there was a gentleman, Wilson Graybadge, who invented the implantable pacemaker. Now, a pacemaker is a device which keeps the heart beating regularly through electronic pulses. And so what happened was he collaborated with Boykin, and they adapted the resistor that was control unit. They called it a control unit for use in the device. Now, what this did was it made the pacemaker last longer, and it also made it be able to be produced at a lower cost so more people could get the pacemaker, thus saving more lives. In all, Boykin patented 26 electronic devices over the course of his career, and the control unit say 1,000, and I'm kind of guesstimating that. I think it would probably be millions. But here is a fact that I thought kind of unfortunately for Mr. Boykin, he passed away from heart failure at the age of 61 in 1982. So, as Mr. Boykin was saving lives, Mrs. Brown was more interested in protecting hers and her family. In the 1960s, Mrs. Brown lived in Queens, New York. As a nurse, she worked long hours and returned late at night. And her husband, Albert, was an electronic technician, and his hours were erratic. So she was often home alone. Now, she was fearful of being vulnerable in a high-crime neighborhood. So she decided to increase her level of personal security. And again, I love this. Here's how ingenious that Mrs. Brown was. She put on several peepholes. Now, I hope you can see a couple of these. These peepholes right here. They were all at different levels. So there was one that was for tall people, peephole. Then there was someone for average. And they even had one for someone small, a child. Another thing she did, she had a camera that would move up and down so you can see where they were in the peephole. And it's so interesting because it picked up images on a monitor. And they used what they called a wireless system. Now this is the 60s she did this, right? Wireless system. And so that means that it really was almost to like, for her to come up there with a camera and all of a sudden to have also video. Video back then was really not even known. What camera could you hook up to video? But she did it. And it allowed her to see not only the images, but to have a monitor that she could place anywhere in the house so she could see anyone at the door. And also a two-way, love this too. See how she's got this design? So she could see whoever was at the door. And if it was somebody that she didn't want and she thought was an intruder was going to break in, she could press a button and it would actually alert the police to come. So, but another great thing too, if it was somebody she wanted to come in, she could hit a remote and let them in. So Mr. and Mrs. Brown filed for a patent for the system in 1966 and they got the patent in 1969. So it takes a long time to get a patent to get it going on. But she is considered the inventor of the first home security system, and also credited with closed circuit television. They call it CC. So it's almost like using a monitor for television. She also laid the groundwork down for security systems that are used today, video monitoring, and also remote controlled door locks. So she had that going on, right? And instant messaging, that was another thing that was kind of important that is used now, because it would be able to go directly to the police and actually have two-way conversation. Sort of like an early, I know 911 was back in the 60s and the 70s, but sort of like a 911. So like Mrs. Boykin, like Mr. Boykin, Mrs. Brown invention continues to work today in such businesses and also apartment buildings. You know, if you're going to an apartment building, they've got to let you in, but a lot of them now have video so they can see who's at the door to let them in, because you never know if someone is being forced at the doorbell and then they let them in and you let somebody else in. So with her system, you were able to actually see that, and they use that, of course, in apartments and also in condominiums. Now, there are some companies that what happens is when someone has an invention, a patent, other inventors come in. And one of the things that happened with Mrs. Brown is that like 13 other inventors came in, and some of the most recent ones, most notable ones, are Ring and ADT. You recognize who they are, right? Mrs. Brown lived in Queens. She stayed, she didn't move, and she died at the age of 66 in 1999. Now here's a question that you may ask. Did Mrs. Brown make any money off her invention? A lot of times when you think of inventions, you're going to make some money. But right, and this was such a great system, but she did not make any money. According to what I was doing, she did not make a profit. It wasn't reported in the press that she made a profit. But what it was that she wanted to give it to other people so they could use it, so she did that. So as Mrs. Brown was protecting her family with her invention, Dr. Shirley Jackson was protecting her dignity and forging a technological legacy. Colored girls should learn a trade. You hear those words. Mrs. Brown heard, Dr. Brown heard those words. Dr. Brown heard those words. And Dr. Jackson heard those words. And it was said by a professor at first. The statement that just hurt her, and it made her think he thought so little of her prospects, even though she had the highest grades in the class. And he made that statement: colored girl should learn a trade. Now, I love her mindset. Now, here I'm going to read a quote from her. She said, "I could give in to ignorance or persevere and pursue excellence. I chose the latter. I made physics my trade." And that's what she did. She received, and this is great, multiple degrees from MIT. Many of you know MIT? It is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She's the first African-American woman to receive a doctorate from the university. And one of the great things is, as you can see right there, how many of you still using a telephone? Really? Line telephone? Okay, all right.
Line, yes, I do.
Well, one of the great things is that some of the inventions are not started from scratch. They're actually started and improved upon. And she worked at Bell Labs, and what she did was, she did some really cool things. The fax machine she came up with helped come up and discover, and also the touch tone, and fiber optics and solar cells. Fiber optics is really important because that's a lot of what your cable and your internet is connected to. So she did that. And one of the things is that she did also the caller ID and unlisted numbers. So she had a lot of things going on. One of the great things she did, I thought was great, she became a leading voice for scientific and technological issues that matter to society. So she was involved in that, and she would go on to serve her country. And from 2009 to 2014, she served on the President's Council of Advisors of Science and Technology with President Barack Obama. In 2015, she was awarded the National Medal of Science, which is the highest honor of contributions in science and engineering, again by President Obama. For the past 22 years, Dr. Jackson has been the president of Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute, which is a research university. And so when you have a research university, it's a heavy deal. It's a very heavy deal. And she's going to be leaving that position in July of this year. Through her academic efforts, Mrs. Brown has planted the seeds of knowledge in many young minds. This is a very cool guy, Dr. Mark E. Dean. His family planted the seed in him in building things. Dr. Dean was born in 1957 in Tennessee, and is credited with helping do the personal computer. Now, with the personal computer, he made it more accessible and more powerful. And his passion for science was inherited from his dad. Now, have you ever thought about where you got your interest to do what you do? Mrs. Smith teaching, all right? I remember how amazing you were and still are. But that whole, I thought you were. And a lot of other people did too. His father was a dam inspector. Now, what I mean by that, for the Tennessee Valley Authority. And so he got a chance to learn how things were made, building. And in 1979, he graduated top of his class at the University of Tennessee, of course, studying engineering. Not long after college, he started to work for IBM, which was the place that he wanted to go to. And he would be associated with IBM for the majority of his career, which is not over at all. He also invented something that helps us out, the Industrial Standard Architecture, ISA, system bus. What that does is, he did that with an engineer, Dennis Moeller, that allows for the computer plugins, such as disk drives and printers. So at the back, if you've ever put plug in your printers and all the stuff that goes into the back of your computer, this is a gentleman who helped put all of that together. And so what was the end result of all of what he had done with them was it was more efficient and better integration that we use today. And along with that was the PC, the monitor. But one of the greatest things that he did, I thought this was interesting, the gigahertz, all right? And it was at IBM that he did this. It's such an important part of the technology because what it does is 1 billion calculations per second. How do you make that? And that's what he did. And he had a great quote. He said, a lot of kids growing up today aren't told that you can be whatever you want to be. There may be obstacles, but there's no limits. And I thought that was such a great thing for him to do. And rightfully so, in 1997, he was honored with the Black Engineer of the Year Presidential Award, and then inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. So it's so interesting that he's still alive, and he's still doing things. And with all these achievements, he still has a vision. And let's hear what he'd like to do.
My big idea is building a device that's going to replace your wallet. Everything that you carry in your wallet, your passport, your driver's license, your credit card, your money, your pictures, all of that will be put into a small device, about the size of a small cell phone, and you will carry that with you. And it'll carry not only those things, but also carry your medical records, your music, your videos, it'll be a camera. It'll essentially be everything that you will need as you move through life.
I think, isn't that amazing?
Right.
So in all, Dean holds 3 of IBM's original 9 patents in total. He's got 20 patents associated with his name. So if you've ever used a computer, you've benefited from this gentleman, Dr. Dean's invention. Our next inventor took full advantage of the wonders of a computer. And you'll see what I mean. See what these are? Have you used them? You ever send something to someone? A message? You know what these are? Well, they're called GIFs. And this lady right here is computer scientist Lisa Gelobter. She created and developed a lot of the internet technology that we use today. She was born in 1971 and is credited for laying the groundwork for programs developing what these are GIFs. That's what they call GIFs. They're computer graphics, and she did a lot of with that. She also worked on a lot of game-changing internet technologies and created products that billions of people are using, including Shockwave, which is sort of like animation, development of interactive multimedia. So when you see something kind of moving and that kind of thing, she was part of that. Web animation, and probably a lot, Mrs. Smith, I know you probably do this, video games.
He's picking on me.
I'm picking on you because
Right.
I adore you.
You're right.
Yes. She used her online experience to not only become Chief Digital Officer for BET Networks, then as a senior management team of Hulu, a content streaming service. So if you've got Netflix, there's another one, Hulu. She was part of launching that. So with her expertise in strategy development, user-centered design, meaning people be able to use it, product and business management, she got the attention of the White House, and this is really cool. She worked at the White House serving as the Chief Digital Service Officer of the Department of Education. She helped work with healthcare.org, not org.government. When that crashed, I don't know if many of you remember all that crashed and they had some problems with it. She was one of the people that helped put that together and kind of get it back together. And as you can see, she is amazing. And in this clip, she talks about why it's important to have technology.
It means problem solving. It means observation and empathy. It means communication and collaboration. It means analysis, prioritization, and persistence. It means creativity and innovation.
So as you can see, she's amazing. Now she has a company. She's the CEO, co-founder of Tech Equitable, and which provides a independent, confidential platform to address issues of bias, harassment, and discrimination in the workplace. So lots, not only coming, doing the digital, but now helping people with things going on in the workplace. I think she's amazing. And if you ever get a chance to go on YouTube and hear her speak, she just is just worth so much information. As age doesn't matter when it comes to invention,
Right.
as we learn about Bishop Curry, 10 years old,
Yeah.
all right? He was inspired. Now, unfortunately, he was inspired to do this after a 6-month-old baby girl in his community died accidentally being left in a hot car for 4 hours. He knew the family. The girl was the same age as his little sister was at the time. So it struck to him that no child should die in this way and no family should suffer that loss. He believed that the accident could have been preventable. So what he did was he sketched a device that could cool a baby and alert parents and the authorities of a situation. Now, if you look at this design, it's really, really interesting. The design would essentially attach a fan to the back to a child's seat belt, and they call it sensors, the LiDAR sensors. And I won't go into what they are, but they're kind of like they're all over. Would detect the presence of a child left behind in a car. The fan would then have cool air on the child until the parents or the authorities are notified by cell phone. And that's another cool thing about it. They would be notified by cell phone to come to the car and get them. So I thought it was really interesting. And also the initial sketch included some technologies as a cooling fan, which we just talked about, various sensors, GPS to kind of let them know where the car is. If the parents can't get there, the police would know where the car is. Wireless connection, which means that it would be like a phone. Messaging capabilities to not only alert the parents and the authorities. And he came up with a name of the device, and it's called the Oasis. He and his family raised over $50,000 through the crowdfunding source GoFundMe to help finance the prototype. And what that is, a prototype is sort of the making of the actual product before it has gone to production or anything along that line. And he's so interesting. He also, in this soundbite, gives some advice about some words of advice. Very interesting kid.
My first word of advice would be don't let age limit your possibilities, because there's this one kid who's a pilot and he was like 14, so it was like crazy.
Yeah.
My second word of advice is don't let limited resources limit your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
My last word of advice would be let helping to be your highest priority.
That's great.
Yeah, so as you can see, he's such an interesting kid.
Yeah.
And he's such an interesting kid. However, his father mentioned that what he wanted to do, according to Bishop, they did get a patent for Oasis. It was $20,000, which they got in 2018. And he hopes to sell it for $50 so everybody could have it. Now, according to my research, it's difficult to find any current information about Bishop Curry and the status of Oasis at this point. But his father did mention in 2018 they're working with a company called Patents to Market, which helps inventors develop their innovations and professionally market them. So it's not dead in the water, but we're not really sure where it's at. So whether it makes it to the marketplace, whatever that Bishop Curry has showed us, if you see a need, you can actually do something about it regardless your age. So I think this kid is amazing. I wish him, he's probably now about 14 years old at this point right now. So as I asked you, have any of you ever thought about doing inventions or coming up with any ideas or anything? It happens sometimes, but here's an interesting thing. Yeah, we'll click it. Well, there's a picture that I had up there that had showing dinner. I was having dinner actually with my aunt for her birthday, and she's in her late 70s. And I was telling her that I was preparing for the speech about inventors, and she had said she had come up with 2 inventions. So I perked up. This lady is amazing. She was a nurse, and she also is very, very smart. And the only thing about it, what happened was that she didn't know how to go about doing it. You know, and that's what a lot of inventors do. Don't know how to go back. Because back in the day, she didn't have the depth of information that we have. We can go really on the internet. Okay, dinner with Aunt Chichi. There it is, right there. All right, and she, like I said, she was telling me about this, and she came up, and of course, her being a nurse, and the internet, of finding the internet, where any question can be answered. You go on YouTube, you can Google something, and find out how that is. And so, what we don't want people to do is stop believing in what they can do. You know, don't let what you don't know stop you from doing what you can do and get your invention out there. Whether it is going to be a service, product, or an app. Apps are really big. Many of you use apps. You know, I know I do a lot of times. So here's a couple suggestions I have from creation to reality for anybody who's out there who has wants to get something going on, has an invention. One thing is keep good records, such as logs with dates. This gives you a timeline from start to finish on showing that you came up with the concept, and if people try to take it or anything once you get your patent, you have an idea of what you did. Also have some notes with sketches and additional notes to be able to do that. Number 2, I really believe this, have a good team, have a good lawyer that knows about patents, that knows about copyright issues, all that. And of course, what's very important is the money. So you want to make sure that you have a good accountant. You want to be able to track where your money's going, because when you're investing in an invention, money can go really quick. But if you have somebody who shows you how it's being spent, and also how you're saving it, and also correct taxes, this could save time, money, and a lot of headache in the long run. And this one I really have learned on a personal level, and that is find locally like-minded people. People who are thinking like you do, or want to do what you want to do, which is invent something. Join some social media groups and also support groups with your similar interests. And those are just a few suggestions to keep great notes and logs, find a good team, find locally like-minded people. And as you heard, all these people are extraordinary, but yet ordinary people who saw a need and filled it. And of course, anyone out there? So can you? I'm going to leave you with a quote from Michael Jordan. I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I cannot accept not trying. Thank you. I want to bring Anthony up here. Do you guys have any questions or anything that we can, because he was a big help in putting all of this together. We kind of we like this person from the tech. Hi. Come on in, have a seat.
Anyways, yeah, like he said, him and I worked hard on this. We started with a list of, I think, 20, 30 black inventors, and we thought all of them were great. All of them had a different lesson to teach, and we kind of whittled it down to these are inventors who saw a need and filled a need. But that isn't to say that the people we considered weren't also valuable, because many of them made mistakes as inventors. Many of them had to go through a journey of learning to get where they are, however successful they may be. So some of these individuals that didn't make the presentation, I've also included in the handouts. I would greatly appreciate if some of you take a copy home, tell your friends what you've learned here tonight, and unless there are any other questions, thank you so much for attending.